Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 8 o'clock here in the morning, Friday morning, November the 12th, and I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and the chat room is open, and I have the link in there to the article that I wanted to look at this morning from Dave Decker, Anger Resources, www.angerresources.com, ANGERESOURCES, Anger Resources. It's a great website for anybody who may, feel like they might have a problem with their own anger management, or they might know somebody who has a problem with anger management. That's generally the case. Lots of people have problems managing their anger and don't even realize it. I know that I did, and years and years ago had many problems with my anger, and got a lot of it. Well, I thought I got it under control because I stuffed it, right? And because I didn't want to hurt anybody, so I just stuffed my anger and was trying to be polite and nice to everybody. And then it would, when I did explode on somebody, it would be really bad, because I had stored up all of this anger for so long that the poor person who actually got the lovely gift of my wrath, it was like, it was out of control and unnecessary. It was just, my inability to deal with it. So that's why I found this website, and I just thought it was so good. The information is so good. Dave Decker and Michael Obsatz, they are therapists. That's their website, and they work with that's their field. That's what they work in is. They work with families and individuals regarding, domestic abuse, violence, anger issues, and whatnot. So it's a great website, and I hope everybody will go check it out. There's all kinds of information on there about road rage and, people getting how to control our anger, how to manage it, because anger really is necessary. It's normal, but not when it becomes abusive, right? So that's the whole issue. We're supposed to be able to be assertive, but not abusive. And that's what I did not know how to do, and I'm still working on it. So that's the thing. It's a problem for many people, and you don't have to have been abused just to have this problem. I know lots of people who've had these anger management problems who were not abused as children, right? But I know where mine comes from. So that's the whole issue. That's why I'm taking a good look at this as one survivor, a child abuse survivor. So we've been looking at this about 3 weeks. I want to look at this one article this morning about abuse of women. It's an article that Dave Decker wrote, and we'll maybe look a little bit through there next week, and then we'll move on. But I want to look at a few of Michael Obsatz's articles as well, and then we'll probably move on after that. So we'll be looking at a different topic here pretty soon, because we've been on this for about 3 weeks. But this is such important information for people, I think. And if you have survived child abuse, then you might know what I'm talking about. You might really relate to this website, because there is some really good information on there about domestic violence and abuse and abusive behaviors, the shame-rage connection, which I just thought was really interesting. And we covered that. We worked on that for about a week probably. Really good stuff. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate it. I'm not a counselor or therapist. I don't hold any certificates in those areas. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows because I wanted to be one more voice, for people. I'm sitting on the other side here, 3.5 years later, extremely happy and thankful to be where I am today. And I know what it's like to be on the other side, suffering, and not getting any help and not reaching out, no one to talk to, and sitting around in a pit of really despair. And so that's why I wanted to do this show, to be one more voice for people out there, because I know there's so many people, who are suffering with this, the aftermath of abuse, right? So I know this is a fact, and my heart is with you. So, yeah, sometimes a professional counselor or therapist, right? And you have to listen at your own discretion. Everything I talk about is related to abuse, and it's very much, I don't sugarcoat it. And, my shows are very sensitive. So I would say, you have to know what's good for you to listen to, and if you feel like the topic might bother you, then you have to turn the show off, or, it's your discretion. Listen at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I ask that you have someone listen to the show with you, have permission to listen to my shows, because any show that I do, because my shows are, there's a lot of adult content on my shows, and young people should be protected at all times. And I don't know how young the people are who are listening to my shows. So make sure you have someone listen to the show with you, an adult who can help you make the decision whether you should be listening, right? So we'll get right into this. This is some good info. It's called The Impact of Abuse on Women. It's by Dave Decker. It's from www.angerresources.com, And he just goes, he's specifically looking at the impact of abuse on women here in this article, even though, throughout this website they do talk about Michael Obsatz and Dave Decker, the fact that men are abused as well. And it's not, they're not biased, and they're not trying to say that it's only men who abuse and it's only women who are abused, right? They're just saying they have these different articles for different people and for different, to cover the different sides of it. But this morning I did want to take a look at this because the impact of abuse on women is definitely, it's an issue because so many women are abused. And so, I know myself that my mom was my main abuser. My mom's mom was her main abuser. So, I've seen lots of women who have been very abusive in my lifetime, whether it's friends or family. So I know that women do abuse. But the thing is, and abuse men, other men as well. So, but just because, my mother was also abused, right, by my father. So that's the whole issue. I know I've seen both sides of this, right? So it is important to take a look at what happens to women when they are abused, by their partner or victimized, right? It's just so important for people to know. And if you've been through it and lived through it, then of course you would know firsthand what that's all about. But I think he's really done a good job to bring out just exactly what happens to a person, to a woman, when they're being abused, or if they have been abused, what they go through. And it's just important for people to know that it's extremely damaging, and for anyone to be abused, whether it's a man or a woman or a child, and no one deserves to be abused, and it's just absolutely horrific what people do to each other, and it's got to stop, right? So if you have been abused, you make sure you get some help. That's what I sat around for 41 years and having my own pity party and really not doing well. And I'm glad I started to reach out. I really am, because that's when I started to heal. So before that, I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life in misery, suffering. And, as soon as I started reaching out, I started to realize all these hands came back to me, and it was a really good feeling because no one had ever done that before, even though I had told some people, and some people knew about the abuse and throughout my lifetime. And, I really didn't reach out proactively, to say, man, I want to heal. I want to move forward. I want to actually feel good about myself. So I had to do a lot of work, and I have done a lot of work in the last 3.5 years. It didn't happen overnight. It took me the first probably year and a half just to reach my inner child, So, it takes a long time to, sometimes, especially if you don't go get help. So that's why if you need a counselor, therapist, group support, online group support, whatever it takes for you to feel, to heal and to feel good about yourself, and to heal from the abuse, right? It's just so important. So we'll get into this article here, the impact of abuse on women, and I'm just reading right from his website. I just add my own stuff in there, right? And abuse takes on an enormous toll on the person who is victimized. He says here, the following effects do not always occur with all women who have been abused in a relationship, and they certainly can arise from other sources as well. However, all of these effects have the potential to occur if disrespect, control, and abuse are present in a relationship. So, he's saying it doesn't mean just because a woman's been abused that they will have all of these different things, or it might come from other places. So, right, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of this is caused by the abuse, but it's just that it can occur because of the abuse, the disrespect, the control, right? So, and I've seen that just about on every website because, it's so true. Not all of us experience the same things. It depends on a lot of different factors, and generally you have to have a therapist, a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist or whatever, work with us to find if they would be able to see, right, because they're trained and they know what they're looking for. Just what did affect us from the abuse and what came from other sources, right? But the thing is this is just stuff that can happen to women if they're being abused, right, in a relationship. So he talks about fear, right? He says fear about, and I'm just going to read off what he says here, fear about speaking up or asserting herself and her partner and others making mistakes. Speaking up for or asserting herself with her partner and others, fear about making mistakes, right? So fear about speaking up, being assertive, right? Fear about making mistakes, fear about losing her economic security, like losing her home or her lifestyle, This is big stuff here, and I know because I grew up in a domestic violence situation. My secondhand victim. My parents were hugely abusive to each other, and also I know lots of people who have been through the same thing, and we're trying to get out away from their abuser. Right now, my mom never did try to leave my dad. Well, she did when she was in the 1940s, but they wouldn't allow her to divorce him in Canada in 1944 or whatever it was, because there would have had to been infidelity there, and neither one of them were sleeping around on each other. The courts were like, no, we don't care if he's abusing you. You have to stay married to him because we don't allow divorces for that. It has to be for the reason of infidelity, right? And so my mom couldn't divorce my dad at that point. Now later on she could have in like the 1960s, obviously 1970s, but by then she was so beaten down and so completely messed up, psychologically and everything else because of the abuse that she just figured, oh well, that's my life. I'm just, this is it, right? So incredibly sad. So just what abuse does to people, right? Fear of being left alone, fear of the unknown, right? Fear if she left the relationship, what her life and her future would be like. Because they don't know, because it's all the unknown, right? It hasn't, what's going on in the relationship, and so that's a lot of times people that are abused. That's why they don't go get help, because they're thinking, will it just be worse if I leave? Will I end up in a worse situation? Will I end up on the street? Will I end up, But when it comes to your life, and you need to save your life, because your partner is threatening your life and actually trying to take your life, then I would say just about anything would be better than that, because you want to stay alive, right? That's the whole issue here, right? That's exactly the whole issue here. We want, you really need to fight to stay alive. So whatever you have to do, and if your life is being threatened, then anything just about anything would be better than losing your life, because once your life is gone, it's over, right? So that's the whole issue. I've seen this stuff to the maximum degree. And so I know how incredibly serious this stuff is. It says, fear that if she left the relationship, what her life and her future would be like. Fear of what others think about her, right, or what others think of her if she left, right. Fear about her staying with someone who is disrespectful and abusive with her. So let's say she leaves the relationship and moves on, and finds a safe house or finds somebody who will let her stay with them. And then these people are just as abusive or just as disrespectful as where she was staying before. And this can happen, and this is why, we have this whole issue with kids, getting removed from their homes, put into foster care, and the foster care parents abuse them, right? So this is the whole issue. It's really a sick, sad, sorry world that we live in. It really is. Fear of the children being abused and learning to be abusers or victims themselves, and that's a huge fear for a woman who cares about her children. You know what I mean? For someone who loves their children and doesn't want to see them being abused and doesn't want to see them become the abuser themselves, right? Fear about losing her ability to work or her job, right? Fear about becoming emotionally unstable or going crazy. And because that can happen to people, you're abused enough, you can feel like it can send you into a state of, constant instability. You know what I mean? So you almost feel like you are going crazy, especially if the abuser is like playing a lot of mind games and a lot of psychological abuse there. They can make you feel like you're going crazy, and that's how both of my parents were to each other, and they were also like that with us. So very much manipulative and very much playing mind games all the time, right? Except for my parents weren't the type to say, oh, I love you one day, and then the next day beat each other up or something. My parents what they would do is they would manipulate things and say, well, I never said that, or you're crazy, I never said that, And what they would do to us, they would say, when my dad wasn't around, my mom would say, well, your father, he's just crazy, and because he was really, he's borderline schizophrenic, and he was absolutely out of his head, and so. But my dad, when my mom wasn't around, my dad would say, oh, your mother's crazy, we need to leave her and move on to California. And he would try to get me to leave with him, to leave my mom, just me, not the other siblings, and go to California. And, of course, I didn't want to do that because I didn't trust my dad for 2 seconds, right? He was very much unstable and abusive, right? And I was worried that he would kill me, and he was always threatening to kill us all, right? So this is the thing. It can drive people to feel that they are going crazy, right? Fear about being physically injured or killed. if there's abuse in the relationship, right? Especially if there's a lot of threats and there hasn't been a whole lot of abuse yet as far as physical abuse goes, but the partners, the abusive partners threatening these women, it's like, it's of course it's very scary because you don't know, you're sitting there thinking, would he kill me? Would my partner kill me? It's a fear. They cause you. It's a fear based. They control you by fear, right? So that's the whole issue. It's very scary. It's not healthy at all. Fear about her partner hurting or killing himself or others that she loves, right? Because many times abusers will say, well, if you leave, I'll kill myself, or I'll kill your parents, or I'll kill the kids, I'll kill the pets, right? Whatever. Or I'll hurt them, right? Just because they're trying to control this, right? That's what they're doing. Abuse is about control. It's not about a loss or a lack of control. It's a means of control. They will do whatever it takes to make you stay. So whether it's threats or whether it's the real thing, and they actually do, lash out and hurt the kids and kill the pets and, this that type of thing. Whether it's a threat or the actual real, act of doing these things, they will do whatever they have to do to keep you in the relationship and to get control and keep control of the actual relationship and everyone in it, right? And that's the sad part about abusers. Abuse is a choice. They don't have to do that. There's no excuse for abuse, and abuse is 100% preventable because it's the abuser is choosing to do it. So if the abuser would stop what they're doing, then this wouldn't be happening. Right? It's like, this is absolutely sick and pathetic what happens to people, and it's wrong in every way, right? Depression is another issue he's talking about here. Depression. He goes on to talk about anxiety, panic attacks, shame, defectiveness, inadequacy, incompetence. This is if you're abuse of women, right? This is what happens to women when they're being abused. They often in a relationship, there's depression because of the abuse, anxiety, panic attacks, shame, defectiveness, inadequacy, incompetence, and guilt, frustration, anger, irritability, defensiveness, rebelliousness, and being edgy, right? And that's something that people can take on. That was pretty much my mom. She was so frustrated and so angry and so irritable and defensive, and extremely rebellious and mad because of how she had been treated her whole entire life, that she just took it out on everybody else around her because she was abused, right? And my dad, of course, he was very frustrated and angry and irritable and defensive. They were both like that, right? And because he was abused as a child, and my mom, because he was abusing her, was retaliating and abusing him, so the two of them were just a mess. Appearing hysterical, out of control, irrational. My parents were quite often like that. They were always seeming to be out of control when things would escalate, like not regular day when they were just sitting around the house, but if there was a fight, generally that's the issue. There was no normal kind of arguments in our home. There was no normal where people would just get heated up and they maybe just raise their voice a little bit. Like once my mom or dad started to argue, that was not. We knew it wasn't going to go good because they did not know how to control them. Like they did not know how to sit down and talk things out, but they did know how to hurt each other, right? So we knew that as soon as the argument would start, generally somebody was going to get hurt, whether it be my mom or my dad, and sometimes the kids, right? So appearing hysterical, out of control, irrational, that they used to be like that quite a bit, right? And that's the whole issue. That they appeared to be, but they weren't really, because they knew exactly what they were doing, right? So it's not like they were out of control. There's just no such thing. They were allowing themselves to hurt each other and to hurt their children, right? Being disrespectful and abusive herself, right, toward partner, children, or others. So a woman being abused then can become disrespectful and abusive herself. That's what happened to my mom, right? So, this whole stuff, like, this is absolutely harsh and horrific, and it's so sad that people, because they've been abused, for instance, my mom, we're talking about the abuse of women here, so let's just talk about my mom here, and my situation and other women that I've known. Women, it's like, they're abused, and so if they stay in it long enough, and they live their lives like that, and it was their life as a child as well, which is my mom's case, right? She grew up like that, and then she married a man and thought it would be so much better, and it turned out to be just that much worse. And he became abusive to her, and then she was just abused her whole life. So she instead of wanting to protect her children and wanting to try to keep the peace in the home, as much as she could. She became another abuser, right? Because she was so tired of being battered. She was so tired of being abused in every way, right? And so, I could look at it at that, in that respect, right, and take a look at the whole thing and realize that, yeah, my mom, she was abused her whole entire life, and she was so tired of it. But does it give her an excuse to do what she did to me? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole issue, just because that's like me saying, okay, I was abused, so it's okay that I go ahead and abuse everybody around me, I don't have children, so like if I had children, man, I'd have to be really careful because you don't want to pass the cycle on, right? And you don't want to hurt your children. My mom didn't mind hurting us and almost killed us, some of us. Not all of us, but a couple of us. And so the whole issue is it's very, very sad, that someone who knows how hurtful it is to be abused and knows the pain involved, because she would sit and cry, at night, and she'd be like, I just want out. I want to kill myself. She was very suicidal, and both my parents were. And, she'd be crying the blues. She hated this life, and she hated herself. And this was when I was a little kid, right? And, of course, my older siblings would be, like, trying to console her and tell her, no, Mom, we love you. And, that wasn't good enough to her. That was never going to be good enough to her that her children loved her and that, that they wanted her to get out and they wanted her to have a good life. That we did not matter or count to her. She was so far down. That's what I mean. Like people just, unless you really got, get the whole picture and understand like the whole thing, it's hard for people to understand that. But that's the whole issue. I understand it because I lived it and I had to live under her abuse the whole time I was growing up, right? And then even after, when I was an adult, she was still very much emotionally and psychologically abusive. She couldn't beat on me anymore, and she was too old and sick to like get up and try to kill me. So I was pretty sure that I was safe in that area after I hit like probably about 18 years old, but 19 or 20 really. She still was pretty strong, and the last time she kicked my ass was when I was about 17. So then the physical abuse stopped, but then she was still always threatening to hit me, and she even through 18 years old. At 18, she was still threatening to hit me, and at 19, 20, she started to stop threatening the physical abuse, and was just very psychologically and emotionally abusive towards me, and was until she died. Right. So that's the whole issue. It's like her children. Nothing was going to make up for the fact that she had been abused. Like she was just holding the whole world at contempt. She was just like, she was so down and so beaten down that she was just like, I have been so, victimized, and I have been so wounded that I don't care about my children, I don't care about myself, I don't care about this life, and I don't care about anything or any of you. And that's what she would tell the family, right? And she would tell us this, right? So the thing is we saw the very bottom of the barrel of depression and the issues that come with somebody who has been abused their whole life, you know what I mean? And so, my parents were both like that, right? And so what that did to the children was cause us to be able to look at the most worst side of humanity and the worst side of what people can do to each other and have to try to survive it, and keep a healthy mind, which is really impossible, right? Because when you're brought up around that, it's like you're being brought up in hell, and that's what I describe it as, and it's because it really was hell on earth, So that's the whole issue. I know what people are going through, and I know how serious and how sick and sad and wrong this stuff is, and people would think it's a joke, People would just sit there and think, well, your mom had every opportunity to get out, but they don't take a look at what somebody can do to somebody psychologically and emotionally to cause them to be in hell. My mom was in hell. That's why she was doing what she was doing to us, because she could not see anything that was good, right? She couldn't see anything that was good about this life, And so, she was often talking about killing herself or killing us or, killing my dad or whatever. And that she hated us, and she didn't want any children, and she hated us all. And, of course, we had the opportunity to be removed from the home when I was a toddler because it was CPS or DHS, whichever one got involved. And my mom went to the courts and begged the courts to let us stay. So my mom went and pleaded with the courts, with the judge, to say, you know what, I want to keep my children. She actually told us this, and I believe it, and I know it's true. But as the other people that were involved at the time knew that this was the case, and were actually trying to help her out with us for a few years, right? And so, she would say stuff like, I begged the courts to let you guys stay in the home because I didn't want to lose my children. But she was so messed up, from the abuse that she had suffered as a child, and also the abuse that she suffered in this marriage with this man for year after year after year, my dad, right? And so that's the whole issue. People don't think about the actual real outcomes and the effects of what abuse really does to people. And, if you've been there and survived it, then you would know. And if you haven't, then this is just a little bit of an eye-opener for you, because it is so incredibly damaging. It is so destructive, and people, if you haven't gotten any help and you don't know who to reach out to or whatever, you make sure that you get help whatever way you can. And whether that's a crisis line, phoning a crisis line, or whatever, reaching out and talking to somebody and getting yourself to safety if you are in this situation right now and your life is being threatened and you're being abused, and young children and kids, you want to get your children out of that home. My mom had every opportunity to leave. That's the whole issue. She didn't have to stay in this hellhole of a marriage, but that was her life, and she accepted it, right? I mean, she accepted it. It's like, we will never know why. So she had a lot of depression. They say her low self-esteem, insecurity, self-doubt, negativity, lack of self-confidence, feelings of worthlessness, loss of personal power. That's what can happen, when there's a woman is abused, right? Anxiety, panic attacks, experiencing an overwhelming sense of apprehension and dread, and feeling unsafe much of the time. Becoming fearful about doing normal day-to-day activities, for example, driving, shopping, leaving the house at all, right? Anxiety and panic attacks. Shame, defectiveness, inadequacy, incompetence, about being abused and disrespected by a partner who says he loves her, which can lead to many of the other effects listed here. So, my parents didn't tell each other they loved them and loved each other and stuff like that. I never heard my dad tell my mom he loved her. Never saw him buy her a present. They never exchanged presents. They never. He never bought her flowers. He wasn't one of those types of abusers who would beat my mom up and then bring her flowers, right? He wasn't one of those types. He would beat her up and then the next day would beat her up again. Or, if she didn't hit him with a pan in the head and knock him out cold, and, then he would just be back up again for another round, So that's the whole issue. It's, there was no love in between them. And even though my mom used to say, well, because I used to say that I hated my dad, to my mom I'd be like, I hate him, and, because I really did at the time, and because he was very much abusive to me too. And I saw what he was doing to her, and I'd be like, I just hate him, and my mom would be like, don't hate your dad, he's just sick. And I'd be like, well, look what he does, you know what I mean? My mom would be like, no, he's just sick, and, he needs our love and stuff, and I was just like, why are you sticking up for him? You know what I mean? He's a really bad man, you know what I mean? My mom was like, she wanted to love him. She wanted to, I think she always wanted to have that marriage, that ideal dream marriage where they get along, and it just didn't work out between them, and they never should have tried to stay together. It was out because they wouldn't get help. So they wouldn't get help with their own issues, or try to get help for the family. So, we couldn't figure out why they would stay together when they were just trying to kill each other all the time and trying to make each other's life the most miserable they could, right? And it's absolutely ridiculous what people will do to each other. And, I mean, we know that people do it. I had lots of friends doing it to each other. I had other family members who ended up in abusive relationships, And I myself really have a lot of relationship issues because I just don't trust very many people. So, I always make sure the door is very close to me. It's in the relationship. It's kind of like, I'll try a relationship with you, but the door is there, and if I don't like you, I'm gone. Because I just can't tolerate any more abuse, right? So that's the whole issue. And so if you're in this situation, make sure that you get some help. Don't suffer on in this and by yourself and on your own. It's so sad. I did that for 41 years. Two of my brothers killed themselves because they would not get help, and I decided I didn't want to go that route. I finally decided to live 3.5 years ago. Started to fight to live instead of die, right? So I'm on the other side of this now, looking back, thinking, thank God I made that decision, and I hope that you will too. And just, take care of yourself. because when people who have been abused don't often take very good care of themselves, and they don't almost know how, but you can do it, and I'm learning how to do that, right? So make sure that you do, you take care of yourself and reach out, find someone to talk to, and don't suffer in silence and on your own and thinking that that's your life. And this is horrible. It's absolutely horrific. Make sure you do reach out and get some help and talk to somebody, right? I'll be back on tonight, my show, as well as Dreamcatchers Talk Radio with Donna Shear, and we have Paso Robles Film Festival coming up, Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, CEO and founder Sandra Potter, President Donna Shear, Southern Regional Director Elizabeth Brawley, and myself are going to Paso Robles Digital Film Festival. We've been invited by Benford Stanley, the director and producer of State and Fate of Children, and it's next Friday, the 19th through the 23rd. We're going to be in California representing abused children everywhere, and we're going to be a voice for these children out here, and for all children who've ever been abused, who are being abused, and who will be abused. We're going to be out there raising our voices and on behalf of abused children everywhere. And so I hope that you will check it out. You can go online and check it out. Just type into your browser Paso Robles, P-A-S-O, Robles, R-O-B-L-E-S, Digital Film Festival, and it'll bring up the website, and you can check it out. It's going to be just awesome. There's going to be all kinds of people there, and we're going out to represent Dreamcatchers and abused children and be a voice for these kids, So be sure and check that out. So I won't be able to do my shows for that period of time, but I will be back on Monday morning, Tuesday morning, and Wednesday and Thursday of next week. So I'll be back on next week again, One Child Abuse Survivor 2 and my other shows. So take care of yourselves, everybody, and have a good day. We'll talk to you again tonight. Bye-bye.